Good evening, and welcome to tonight's panel discussion, Plastics, Recycle, Reuse, Refuse. I'm Carolyn Platt, the panel moderator for our co-sponsors, the Acton Area League of Women Voters and Green Acton, and John Sonner is our Zoom host. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that supports policies, not candidates or political parties, through civic education and advocacy at a local, state, and national level. Green Acton is a nonprofit environmental advocacy organization that works to protect and enhance Acton's environment and to help resolve environmental issues that transcend Acton's boundaries. Tonight is the second in a series of 3 panel discussions our local league is sponsoring this year. The final panel will host police chiefs from Acton, Boxborough, Maynard, Stowe, and Littleton. They'll discuss the effects of COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter movement on community policing, with plenty of time for questions. See the chat for more information on this March 10th event. This is a Zoom webinar, so you'll only be seeing the panel and the moderator. Note that there are separate icons on the bottom of your screen for Q&A and for chat. We welcome your questions on Q&A and we'll be posting resources on the chat. So please don't use the chat for questions. So our registration is over 200 people. This tells me that plastic is on our minds. Much of the plastic in this world is used just once, and only about 9% gets recycled. The vast majority is accumulating in landfills or burned in incinerators. Landfills and incinerators are disproportionately located near communities of color and low-income populations. The plastic pollution is not just a litter or oceans issue. It's a climate issue and it's a human health issue. Disturbingly, plastic never goes away. Finally, lest we forget, in selected uses, there is no better material than plastic, but what we don't need is plastic waste. Our first speaker tonight is Ben Harvey, the president of E.L. Harvey Waste and Recycling Service. Ben's presentation on recycling will start with his short video tour of E.L. Harvey Materials Recovery Facility, better known as a MRF, showing what happens to recycling when it leaves the transfer station. Then he'll join us in person to talk about final destination of plastics, challenges and trends, and also tell us about a valuable and handy source for finding out what can and what can't be recycled. Okay, we're ready for the video.
Hi, I'm Ben Harvey, president and one of the owners of E.L. Harvey & Sons, one of the nation's leading trash and recycling businesses located in the heart of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. E.L. Harvey is a 100-year-old company, and for over half of a century, we have offered innovative recycling services to our numerous client companies before recycling was ever popular. We are proud to be one of the forerunners in this area and continue to bring the newest innovations to life in the recycling world. One of our primary goals has been to lead the implementation of technology to enhance and improve recycling, which we have executed with great success. Nationally renowned for our capabilities and ability to get results for our clients in numerous industries, we continue to seek ways of bringing groundbreaking practices to our industry to lead with best practices in waste management and recycling. E.L. Harvey has always been innovative in all recycling practices. You will see that our new single-stream operation is evidence of our strong commitment to recycling. It is my pleasure to show you our newest single-stream recycling building. Please join me on this tour and thank you for your interest. behind me, you will see what is typical for a single stream recycling facility. As I said before, it's a very mechanized system. The material comes in all mixed together. Then it goes through a series of screens, of floats, of mechanical and manual separation to get the products that we want. So we're going to try to walk through the system and walk through the steps that we take here in Westboro to make a recyclable product at the end of the day. Behind me, you see a normal pile of single stream recycling that is coming in from other municipalities. The material comes in all mixed together. It goes to the metering bin to my left. The metering bin puts a nice level layer of material on the inbound conveyor that goes up to our first picking sorting area. From there, the material goes through a set of screens, which hopefully we'll be able to show you in a moment. So this is our first pre-sort. And what we attempt to do here is take out materials that are too big to go through the system. If you've thrown small appliances or pails, 5-gallon pails, or other types of plastics, film plastic, that might hurt our system or do damage to our system, this is what comes out first. And then the material continues to flow through the rest of the system. After it goes through the pre-sort, it goes through a set of screens that pulls out the larger pieces of cardboard. You can see the cardboard that kind of hops up on top of the screens. All of the other material, including newspaper, cereal boxes, bottles, cans, everything else, falls down through the screens and it goes onto another conveyor to take it into another process. Also at this point that we cannot see is where the glass is broken and into smaller pieces, and then that goes out into a stockpile to send away to glass recycling. The material that's on the conveyor that you're looking at now is the material that came out of the first two screens, the cardboard screens. This is, again, going through a series of mechanical separation where the bottles and the cans are separated from all of the other fiber. The fiber goes onto a quality control conveyor. The bottles and cans go onto another conveyor and continue through the process. We actually have two sets of screen here, one that takes out the larger paper, and then another one we call a polishing screen to get out whatever fiber is left in the system. So after it goes to these two screens, the containers come up on that end conveyor over there, goes through the magnet, and then comes back down this conveyor where here everything is hand sorted. So it's what we call a positive pick. So each one of these guys has a different responsibility on the material that they're sorting out. And the only thing that's left on the belt as it goes the rest of the way is trash and PET and aluminum. Because we have a mechanical separation, it's actually an optical sorter which recognizes the plastic resin, then kicks out the PET, and then the aluminum, we have a reverse eddy current that kicks out the aluminum. They do have optical sorters for the other plastics, but because of the cost, we didn't put them in, but eventually we probably will. Where PET, which is the soda bottles, that's the highest volume of the container line. That's why we put the optical on the PET sorter. So the soda bottles and water bottles are the ones that I was talking about that'll go through an optical sorter. And what it does, it goes through a scan with a lot of light, and it'll pick up the resin and it'll blow it off to the side and separate it out that way. It's quite a system. The material that's being fed onto the baler feed conveyor now are tin cans that have been separated by a magnet. This is our baler infeed, and these bunkers beside us here all have different fiber materials in them. You can see the paper, the cardboard, and when those bunkers are full, we open up these doors, that material comes out on the feed conveyor, and then it's fed into our baler. The baler makes bales that weigh approximately 1,500 to 2,000 pounds each, and from there, they're loaded onto trailers and shipped to mills. The material that's blowing in the air here is paper that we're blowing off of our glass line. Because we want to keep the residue, we want to keep our glass, as much glass as possible. So we try to get the NGR, which is non-glass residue, out. And we're doing that by a fan. Most of this paper is from people that have home shredding systems and shred all of their documents and then put it into recycle. We do recycle this paper after it goes through the blowing system. So we've come full circle in the system. We've come from the beginning where we had all of this stuff mixed together to the end of the line where we have all of this product that is now ready to be shipped to the consuming mills throughout the world. The mixed fiber is going to mills in China. The cardboard is going to mills locally, most of it to upstate New York. The PET containers are going to facilities down in the south of the United States. There's a couple of mills in North Carolina that use that. The mixed color, high density polyethylene, all those nice pretty colors. And we will ship that to another plastics sorter, and they'll run that through that optical, so they'll get the polypropylene out, they'll get the whatever high density polyethylene is left in there, whatever PET, they'll just break everything down into its individual plastics. I hope you enjoyed the tour of our newest single stream recycling operation.
Okay, Ben, it's nice to see you in person. Why don't you continue?
Okay, well, first of all, I want to tell you my voice, I couldn't talk after I got that tour done, shouting over the equipment, as you could hear. A couple of things I just want to talk about today. That facility right now is handling approximately 350 tons a day of recycled single stream material from communities, mostly in the 495 belt, where we're located in Westboro, so it's close into our location, but we do bring material as far away as the Cape up to our facility. Of that 350 tons a day, as I mentioned, a very small part of that is plastics, but we do try to get as much of the plastics out of the single stream as we can. Right now, we're doing about, of that 350 tons a day, about 7 tons of that is high density polyethylene natural, which is water bottles, milk bottles, the milk jugs and stuff like that, opaque color. Another about 7 tons a day of the mixed color, which is your detergent, mixed color high density polyethylene, which is your colored laundry detergent, dishwashing detergent, that type of material. And then about 10.5 to 11 tons a day is PET, which is your water bottles and your soda bottles. And so it's a small fraction of the total 350 tons a day that we bring in, but it's an important part. It's part of the whole stream. Let me see. That material we come in, we're mostly now charging municipalities to handle single stream recycling, only because of the decline in the markets, in most of the markets into China for our bulk grades, not so much the plastic grades, but for our bulk grades. And so we are charging municipalities to bring in and process their single stream recyclables. As you saw in the video, we've invested, our company and a lot of companies, the industry has invested a lot in processing equipment to handle single stream recycling. I mentioned that we've been in this business for over 50 years. I've been doing it myself for, almost 50 years myself. And the technology today is unbelievable. That system there is about 6 years old, and that technology is being outdated. We're looking to update that equipment now. Let me see, I'm just trying to go through. I was going to talk about what COVID has done. COVID has increased the volume of single stream recycling. Also increased the volume of waste generated in the home, but has increased the volume of single stream recycling because more and more people are home. They're eating at home, they're drinking at home, they're consuming more products at home. And so we have seen an increase in our PET soda bottle line. We've seen an increase, not that we're talking about that tonight, but I'll bring it up on our UBC container line. Another part of this is during the beginning of the COVID, people did not want to go to redemption centers to take their plastics and their cans back, so they put them in the recycling bin. So we have seen an increase, and we have also seen an increase in all of our recyclables. our markets right now are pretty much the same as I mentioned in the video. Our PET soda bottles go mostly for carpet down to Virginia and Georgia. Our mixed plastics, our mixed color HDPE goes to a company called KW Plastics that's down, and I believe they're in Alabama, as is our natural. We have seen a tremendous increase in the marketability of these materials in the last year, if not 2 years. There's a demand right now, and I'm sure that Eric can get into this later on as he talks about sourcing material for his facility. Let me see, challenges. Before I go any further, and I'd run out of time here, if there are any questions on what is recyclable and what is not, Mass DEP has a Recycle Smart webpage that you can go to. We worked in conjunction with Mass DEP to put this together to easily identify the materials that our single stream plants can handle. So if you have any questions, and I don't care whether you're sending your material to EL Harvey, to Waste Management, to Republic, we all kind of agreed on these are the things that our plants can handle right now. We do look at new materials that come in. I mentioned we pull the films off early on. The film market has been an up and a down. We try to take advantage. We need to market the materials. We can't just collect it and put it in a warehouse. We need to have markets for it. Again, that's a market that's increasing right now. There is a small percentage, even in our facility, that does go off the end of the line that we do not have markets for, that we have to send off for disposal, but we try to recycle as much material as we can. Some of the challenges we have are contamination. Some of the challenges we have with plastics are multi-layered plastics. We ran into a problem a couple of years ago with soda bottles. They were making out of a plant-based derivative, water bottles and soda bottles. That cannot be recycled with the PET, but it looks the same. Our machines don't know the difference. So it was very difficult at that time. Our employees don't know the difference. They go by recognition. So it was very hard at that time to separate out the plant-based PET type material from the regular PET that could be recycled. Let's see. State and national trends, we look to see a lot more optical sorters like you saw at our plant. And the other thing that's becoming very, very popular today is robotics. As I said, that plant's 6 years old. We're looking to upgrade a lot of the equipment that's in there now. We would like to put in robotics. It's very expensive to do that, but we feel that investing in that gives us the opportunity to extract better quality material and more material at the same time. And I know we're going to have questions later on. I'll leave myself some room to answer some questions. Thank you for your time tonight. Carolyn?
Well, thank you. So it's really interesting that all the MRFs worked with the Department of Environmental Protection to set the criteria for what can be recycled and what can't be. And you mentioned that Recycle Smart site, which is good. And in addition, for Acton residents, we are recommending a Talking Trash and Recycling in Acton, which is a webinar set for March 18th by the town of Acton and Keep Massachusetts Beautiful. So thank you. And it's also good to know where some of these things are going and being reused. Appreciate it. Okay, we now move to the topic of reusing plastics. And I'd like to introduce Eric Hudson, the CEO and founder of Preserve. Since 1996, Preserve has made sustainable products that are good for both people and the planet. At Preserve, they use number 5 and number 2 recycled plastic to create houseware and other products in order to reduce dependence on virgin plastic and to encourage recycling. And while I'm at it, I'm going to take a sip of water from one of Eric's. Okay. They also make products from plant-based biodegradable materials and have won Best for the Earth in the B Corp award system for 8 years in a row. That's great. Eric will talk about some of Preserve's initiatives, including a Gimme 5 program on hold due to COVID and the Preserve Ocean Plastic Initiative. He will share how Preserve uses a life cycle assessment approach to assess the impact of their products. And he'll explain their commitment to playing a role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2030. So finally, to show plastic is not all bad, Eric will discuss the role plastic plays in reducing carbon emissions. So Eric, you're on.
Thank you, Carolyn, very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. Just to make the connection, Ben and I knew each other many years ago working on the Mass Recycle Board. So it's great to see Ben again, and Janet and I know each other as well from the industry. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I want to start just briefly and say that give you a brief on Preserve's founding. I'm a Massachusetts resident almost all the way through, grew up in the Berkshires, and started Preserve, originally called Recycline Inc., on Beacon Hill. And then I quickly moved over to Cambridge because I thought that was a greener address. So we did that lickety split. The main purpose of our company is to show that we can make products that are lighter on the earth and also highly functional. So that there's no sacrifice in the functionality and they can be a lower greenhouse gas product. First and foremost, that is done by making products from recycled materials, essentially reusing Earth's resources, capturing the natural gas that's in that plastic that Ben's process recycles and turns into something that a company like Preserve can source and make a product out of. We make 5 different categories of products. We make toothbrushes, razors, tableware, food storage, and kitchen products. And we also have a food service line now. About 8 years into the company, which we founded in 1997, we started to hear more and more from consumers, probably knocking on Ben's door first, and then knocking on the door of someone like Preserve, originally in Somerville and now in Waltham, saying, you know, I love what you guys are doing, but I still can't recycle my yogurt cup. And what are you going to do about it? So we started a program called Gimme 5. And that Gimme 5 program, primarily through partners like Whole Foods Market, takes back number 5 Gimme 5 bin and then feeds through into our system, in which we then reprocess it. In essence, you know, sort of the step beyond Ben's. We take it into a reprocessing facility. There's one called Aaron in Leominster, and they grind up those yogurt cups and they turn it into a flake. And then some of these guys actually will turn it then into a pellet, and we source that pellet, and we then can process it in our manufacturing facilities, in our partners' manufacturing facilities. We have a key partner based in Leominster as well, one of our manufacturing partners. So the Gimme 5 program, you know, over all the years has been more successful than not. We definitely have had municipal programs call us and say, you know, I don't process number 2s. I don't know what to do with them. And can you, and number 5s, and can you take those? So we have had discussions with towns about the potential to source number 5 plastics. And then we also work with companies on take-back programs. For instance, Preserve has had a take-back program since we started the company. We take all of our products back and return them into something else. And Gimme 5 became the vehicle for that. But we also worked with companies like Stonyfield Farm and Brita and Pacifica to recycle their products in their take-back program and then turn those into products at Preserve. And those can range, the products that we can make can range from our razor or our toothbrush, but they also can become less sort of sexy materials like a brick or a pipe, depending on how, you know, potentially how contaminated the material is when it comes back to us. The Gimme 5 program has been difficult to keep going in the last year and a half, and we're seeking to, you know, really reinvigorate it, rebirth it as we move out of COVID, hopefully, slowly but surely. Mostly it's been an issue as it relates to our partners and their ability to take back materials in the stores. As you may know, a lot of the plastic bags were not allowed to be recycled in stores recently. As well, of course, we couldn't even use reusable bags. Reusable bags. Unfortunately, we're beyond that stage of COVID. People have become much more comfortable with that lack of surface level transmission of the virus. I want to also talk about a couple of key things. We recently took a next step with our mission. And not only are we sourcing recycled materials from partners like one step down the supply chain from Ben, but are also, and from our Give Me Five program, in small part, we do still take the mail in from Give Me Five, but we also have what's called the Preserve Ocean Plastics Initiative now. So about 2 years ago, we said to ourselves, how can we help with this issue? And we basically came to the resolution that we're better at prevention than we are at remediation. So we don't want to be in the activities of, or we didn't think we were capable of being the activities of trying to help, screening the plastics out of the ocean, but we wanted to help prevent the plastics from getting into the ocean. I'm sure a lot of folks have done research on this issue and understand the causes of it. But 10 of the largest rivers in the world are creating most of the, or 80% of the plastics that are going in the ocean from riverways, which is primarily how plastics get into the oceans. And we are sourcing some of that material with partners in which pickers are out there picking the plastics from coastal areas or from tributaries feeding into rivers. And we're bringing that through with our partner Envision in California. And we're turning it into a material to make the handles of our Poppy razor and our Poppy toothbrush. We also give 25% of our proceeds to nonprofit partners, which has been really fun. And the proceeds are growing. So it's exciting to try to figure out, okay, who's the next nonprofit partner we can support? Five Gyres has been our #1 partner to date. As Carolyn mentioned, one of the key things we're seeking to do as a business, and I got to look at John's timer here, is that we recently realized that the biggest impact or lack of impact we can have is to become a zero carbon, net zero company by 2030, but we're going to far exceed that. We're already working really hard on it now, and I think by 2023 we will be net zero. That's really exciting, and we think that this step by consumer products companies, as well as all companies globally, can be a significant front that businesses can contribute to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, the countries and the nations are coming through in the Paris Accord. Many companies have come through, and we're still in it when we went out of the Paris Accord for a while. And we love the steps that companies are taking to say, tactically and strategically, we are going to either offset, or we're going to source renewables, or we're going to reduce, or we're going to reuse, and we're going to take steps to make sure that we're a net zero company. So that's very exciting. And that parlays a bit into one of the key things I want to talk tonight about is, plastics get slammed. There's no question. A lot of, presentations that we do, we talk about, kind of the air that comes into the room. We start talking about plastics. There's this negativity. There's no question there's a negativity. There's an end of life problem, and it's contaminating our oceans, as we all know. I don't need to go through the stats. I've got them right here. We can talk more about those. But there's hope. There are efforts that we can take to prevent plastics from getting into the ocean. And Five Gyres, which is strong anti-plastic advocate and partner of ours, also looks to the hope side and knows that if we reduce the plastics that go into the ocean by 20% every year, in 7 years, we're going to get to a level of 1990 levels of plastic in the ocean. And that's a level in which the ocean was able to handle the plastics in the ocean. And I don't want to overstate that because none of us want any plastics in the ocean, but in essence, it came to a state of homeostasis where you didn't see beaches of plastics all over the place. You didn't see waves and surfers of plastics raining in on them. And that's a much better place than we are here today. In essence, the ocean can process that plastic and deal with it, and we don't have the strong negative effects on marine animals. I also wanted to, just highlight that when we look at plastics, I think, most of us know on this call and this webinar that they are the right choice, as Carolyn mentioned, as it relates to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Just forgetting about end of life for a second. If you're going to design a plane, a car, a train, something that carries yogurt across the country and brings it to your home, a thin-walled polypropylene plastic cup is far better than glass or steel. And of course, we tried to design planes that were all steel, all metals, they might not get off the ground. So there is a place for plastics. We're all looking at plastics right now in our computers. Of course, there's an argument to be made to reusables. Okay, if we can be durable, I get it. That's more of a place for plastics. When we go into the single-use area, let's find better solutions. So whether that's better recovery or on the front side, of course, redesigning products so they reduce from a packaging standpoint, from a product standpoint, making them more recyclable, as Ben was talking about, the issues with the plant-based PET bottle and sort of the frankenplastics that can be created. Designing for recyclability is key. But I'd also say that making products and really investing in the innovation needed around new materials is key. And at Preserve, we're really, really focused on that. So one of the key materials we like, sorry, I have one right here. Earlier, I was eating my dinner on a PHA fork. And, PHA is material sort of beyond PLA. And it is a plant-based material, and it's home compostable. And we think it can get to a point where it is benign enough to be marine degradable. And it can also get to a point, we believe, whether that's PHA or a next level material from PHA, where it's actually a nutritious, treat potentially for marine animals. So no one wants these plastics to run astray and find its way to the ocean. But if they do, let's design them made from materials that are not harmful to marine animals or to the oceans. So with that, I think I will pause, and I'm looking forward to the discussion ahead. I don't think there's any key points I missed, but Carolyn, if you think I did, I'd be happy to continue on.
Well, you mentioned the life cycle assessment.
Yes, great point. So when we talk about the footprint of plastics, Preserve has made our products from recycled plastics ever since the first days. And we don't exist here to make products from virgin plastics. We make products from reused materials, from recycled plastics. And in doing so, and also in lightweighting our packaging or making our products reusable, we also seek to investigate, study, and measure the full life cycle of that product, both from its origins to its second life. And we'd like to spend a lot more money on this if we could, but it's called a life cycle assessment, which many of you may be aware of, but really looking at the impact and the greenhouse gas emissions of your product from its first days in sourcing the materials that you put into your product, originally the mining of those materials potentially, and then the manufacturing process, and then the second life afterwards, or potentially going to landfill if that's where it ends up. So these life cycle assessments have really become something that a lot of companies are utilizing, using science to make sure that they're trying to design their products to be as light as possible. And in essence, on a very high level, if you look at using recycled materials versus using virgin materials, if you look at using recycled polypropylene versus virgin polypropylene, you're having about 50% less emissions in that product with that product, and you're also utilizing 50% less resources like water in the production of that product. So again, we'd love to be doing much more life cycle assessment. It is expensive to hire, and we hope to be measuring all aspects of our business going forward. Fortunately, the net zero assessment is really more of a holistic look at our entire operations, and each of our products are included in there, but we don't have to kind of break out what's the impact of each one of our products. We have over 50 now, so it can be again expensive to do that on a product by product basis. And when you do it on a more holistic basis as it relates to all your transportation and all your manufacturing, and then also all the use and the potential disposal of your products, it's a bit more economical.
Wow. Well, who would think from holding a toothbrush that there's all this thinking and creativity, and I would say a lot of encouraging things that are happening. I congratulate you if you get to 2023 net zero. I'd like to come to the party. So let us know.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much. So now I am most pleased to welcome our last panelist, Janet Dominitz, the Executive Director of MassPIRG. MassPIRG stands up to powerful interests by advocating for the public interest in many areas, including tonight's topic, zero waste. MassPIRG believes, and I quote, "It's time to move beyond single-use plastic by getting rid of the most harmful waste and stopping the use of things we truly don't need." So Janet will update us on the recently filed plastic bills in the Mass legislature, and she'll tell how we can give important input to the Mass Department of Environmental Protection on their solid waste master plan draft. And she'll also talk about PIRG's national campaign against Whole Foods to get rid of single-use plastic in its stores. So Janet, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Just to follow up on the last comment, I want to go to any party, please. When are parties coming back?
Right.
Sooner the better. Well, this is a party. Let's consider this a party. There's 120 of us here, so this is our Thursday night party, and thank you for having me. As Carolyn said, I'm Janet Dominitz. I'm the director of MassPIRG, and I'm a little behind Ben. I just celebrated my 40 years at MassPIRG, so I have a little catching up to do, but Ben and I are roughly in the same generation. So I'd like to talk about three things tonight. First of all, I want to give you a little bit of background or theory to what we mean by zero waste, which is what we are promoting. Secondly, as Carolyn mentioned, tell you a little bit about our state campaigns. And third, mention our national campaigns. And I'm looking at the time to make sure I stay within my allotment. So starting with our theory, our roadmap for zero waste, I'll take a moment of personal privilege and say that I grew up with a grandmother who was born in 1901, one of my favorite humans ever, who used to say to us, "Enough is too much." And I can't say that I got that when I was 7 years old, but now I live it, and I hope every day that she hears what we're doing, because it is all about that sentiment and that sensibility. My dad was a World War II veteran. He used to say to us, like, in any occasion, waste not, want not. So, I mean, I was 12 years old for the first Earth Day in 1970, wrote the poem, really had in my DNA this notion that we shouldn't waste before environmentalism was even a word. So that's my own background. In terms of our organization, I just want to step back for a second, again, to give some context. I want to read something for a moment that recently, maybe you saw this as well. A new analysis that was recently published in the journal Nature poses this: the year 2020 will likely be the year when human-made mass surpasses the overall weight of biomass, which is basically living things on the planet. That is estimated to be, and this it has 11 zeros, so I'm just going to say 1.1 teratons. That's with one R. A milestone that speaks to the enormous impact that humans have had on the planet. On average, the researchers estimate that materials, including concrete, bricks, asphalt, metals, plastic, wood, and glass, that outweigh the body weight of every person on the planet are being produced each week. So that's just like sets the stage. Then you think about that sets the stage for the planet. Then we come into the United States, we're 4% of the population of the planet, and we generate 12% of the world's waste. That waste, when we say waste, it's kind of like an abstract concept, but waste goes two places, landfills and incinerators. We do not have the time tonight to make the laundry list of all the pollution that comes from landfills and incinerators. I don't think I'm overstating to say that there is nothing good about either of those things. Then we bring it home to Massachusetts, where we are generating something a little over 5.5 million tons of waste each year, and our progress has flattened. If anything, it might have gotten a little worse. The most recent numbers, I believe, from DEP are from the Department of Environmental Protection, which I will now call DEP. I believe they're 2018. So that's, I just wanted to paint that somber picture and then talk for a moment about how plastics fit in here, and then move on, as I said, to number 2 and number 3, what we're doing about it on a state level and a national level. So plastics, and this number may have been mentioned already. If I'm repeating, I'm sorry, but 8.3 billion tons of plastic have been produced since 1950, and half of that is in the last 15 years. So that's to give a little context. You know, somehow we did have modern civilization before plastics. I am not advocating that we go back to 1948, but I am trying to just give a little context for plastics in our modern life. I know Carolyn said this earlier, it bears repeating that less than 10% of plastic has ever been recycled. So I don't want to discount those numbers on the bottom of the containers. They, of course, are important. But the fact is, if we just like take that one step back, less than 10% of all plastic ever produced has actually been recycled. A third note there is we have to also look at the front end, because even if we could wave a magic wand when we were done with X plastic item and it would just disappear into fairy dust, the fact is that making that plastic also has severe polluting implications. It's mostly made from petrochemicals. I just took a class the other night. There's a plant being built right now in Pennsylvania to take fracked gas and turn it into plastics. They're wanting to make more plastic. I mean, the making of plastic with petroleums is enabling fossil fuels and a lot more polluting problems in our state, in our country, on our planet. So at our organization, our theory, our jumping off point, our promoting zero waste is that we make too much stuff, that we generate too much waste. And if you look at plastics, that's a simple place. I don't mean easy, but it is a simple, straightforward place, a logical one, and an extremely important one to start to turn this sinking ship in a plastic-filled ocean around. So that's just a little bit of context, you know, how we see the world. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, so what are we doing about all that? If you are familiar with the legislative process in Massachusetts, then I will be repeating what you already know, which is our sessions started on the first Wednesday of January. So about a month and a half ago. The bill filing deadline just ended 4 days ago. Friday, February 19th was the deadline for filing bills. So we're still sorting through the thousands of bills that have been filed, but I would like to talk about some of them. Before I do that, I just again want to give you sort of like my approach to all these campaigns. There is no one silver bullet. So I have favorite bills that I love working on, but we're not going to solve the problem of waste and plastic pollution with any one bill. There's no one way to do it. That's number one. Number two, and again, this is my personal privilege to say this, I like the focus on legislation over lifestyle. And I feel like I get into conversations with people where their entire, every ounce of energy and focus and commitment that they have ends up going into, worrying about like, I have to do all this research to decide, do I buy Stonyfield or do I buy Dannon? And what should I have in my refrigerator? And is my shopping habit better than my neighbor? It's like people get really understandably focused on what they're doing every day. But I have spent 40 years looking at, how do we make the systems work? How do we change the infrastructure? How do we influence our decision makers literally in the public interest? And so I'm not somebody who advocates, buying a car that goes 5 miles a gallon or anything. But on the other hand, I like to focus on legislation over lifestyle. So that's where we're coming from. And then the third thing that I'll just mention in terms of the advocacy work that we do is keep your eyes wide open as to who's opposing these measures. And I'll give you an anecdote on that in a moment. So on the state level, in no particular order, we have relaunched this year and just filed on Friday our campaign to update the state's bottle bill, the deposit law. We have put some new measures in there. The deposit has been a nickel since 1983. If you can show me anything else that costs the same that it does in 1983, I'd love to see it, but we want to double that deposit to 10 cents. We want to include every container. I was cringing a little bit watching Ben's video because there's not a single beverage container that should be on that conveyor belt. We know how to do this, and we should do it for water bottles, and we should do it for iced tea, and we should do it for all those single-use beverages that a lot of which end up as litter or as trash. So we've got a new bottle bill. We've refiled the bill to ban single-use plastic bags. There are 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. 141 of them, tired of waiting for the state legislature, have moved on their own to ban single-use plastic bags in their towns or cities. And we should do it statewide. It's beyond time, it's late. There is a bill to establish what we call right to repair. 8,000 cell phones a day in Massachusetts get tossed. And a lot of that is because we're not given the tools or the schematics, the directions anymore as to how to repair our own stuff, or Apple makes the battery glued in so you can't just lift it out and put in a new one. There's legislation filed to give us as consumers right to repair our electronics. There's a bill filed this year to get producers to be responsible for their products like we've done in other states with paint and mattresses and other polluting items. And then I want to mention, Carolyn said that the Department of Environmental Protection, as a result of a law that we helped pass in the 80s, every 10 years has to issue what's called a solid waste master plan. It's basically a blueprint for how we're going to deal with waste for the next decade. They can't do all of it on their own. Some they have the authority to do, some they're just recommending to the legislature or to cities and towns, but they have to have this blueprint, which is a really important document and reference point. And we are asking them to make it a zero waste master plan. So those are just a few places where if you want to get involved in changing policy on a state level, I mean, there's plenty more, but I just wanted to feature a few. And then we're lucky enough, MassPIRG, to be part of a national network of state PIRGs, and we often combine forces to take on national targets, one of which is Whole Foods. An organization called As You Sow, that's SOW, which is like an activist-y think tank, put out a report recently on major retail chains and their practices around plastic, and they gave Whole Foods an F, like in failing. And while Whole Foods was a leader some years ago and were one of the first to ban single-use plastic bags, they now have too much single-use plastic packaging in their store, and we're asking them to reduce that. We also have a really cool campaign. Waste is out of fashion. A lot of the fashion industry, they knowingly make too many clothes, dispose of them. It's polluting, it's trashing. It gets back to this reduce, refuse imperative that we think is so important as we go forward. And I guess that's the last thing I would say is, while I truly cherish and believe in and promote recycling, I think in the coming year and years, we have to get back to the first word in that mantra, which is reduce. I read an article last year, maybe you saw it in the New Yorker, about the whole, gyre problem in the oceans. And this marine biologist who's been studying plastics in the ocean for a while said, and I quote her, "Recycling has become the fig leaf for consumerism." And that brings us right back to this imperative of refuse, reduce, let's get to zero waste. And I can't wait to get there with you. And I'm going to, I'm sure there's a lot of resources. I'm going to put in the chat my Twitter handle, because as you might imagine, I have a lot of opinions and I express them there. So I will put that there, and then we can go to Q&A.
Okay, thank you. Legislation over lifestyle is kind of a, I'm sitting here, is this a paradigm switch for me? Because I think we're so busy, especially stuck at home, maybe thinking about the things we can do there and actually making life simpler. But thank you for that. We've got great legislators in our area. So I guess it's just a matter of saying, keep up the good work. But thank you so much, Janet. Your leadership is very important. All three of you, your leadership is very important. And now we're going to open up to Q&A. We've got a lot of questions. And as I think I mentioned, I also got some ahead of time. So I'm going to be pulling from both. Many of you asked specific questions about what can and can't be recycled. And again, I'll go back to what Ben said. A reminder, recyclesmartma.org has all the answers. They have a thing called a recyclopedia where you can check out what you can recycle. Okay, so.
Carolyn, can I say something? Because this comes from a DEP
Absolutely.
resource also, which is one of the best stories that I've heard about reduce. DEP has amazing resources, and they one of their programs, they advise businesses on how to reduce waste. And I went to one of their seminars, and this technician person said they went to a restaurant that was really struggling with the amount of waste that they produced each week. And it turned out it was a burger place, and one of the most popular items on the menu was French fries. And one of the biggest, I can't remember the numbers of pounds, one of the biggest streams of waste was the potato peels, because they were heavy and wet, and they were just, millions a day, whatever the number was. And this technician from DEP suggested, well, why don't you leave the peels on the potatoes? You want to talk about win-win. Everyone, all the customers were like raving, they tasted better. And then there was literally zero waste. And I just love that story because I feel like it's a metaphor. There's so many things hiding in plain sight. when I started talking about zero waste a decade ago, it sounded a little, aspirational blue sky, but now there's so many examples like that. And again, I just want to give DEP a shout out for having, the kind of resources to offer us those great ideas.
That's brilliant. Okay, thank you. So, Eric, here's one from a high school student, and he asks, do different types of plastics affect the environment differently? And actually something, Ben, I'm sure you can speak in on this too. Now, Eric, I know you touched on this when you were talking about some plastics reducing carbon emissions, but can you give some other examples of plastics that might affect the environment differently?
I can. I just first caveat. I'm not a scientist. Our COO really holds up that environmental science side of our team here at Preserve. But basically, I'll say that we focused on polypropylene because of our research with UMass Lowell, and when we were in the business of recycling plastic, we chose the most benign, and polypro and high density polyethylene, possibly low density polyethylene, are the most benign plastics as it relates to the chemicals that are going into its makeup. The chairman of the plastics engineering department at UMass Lowell, really steered us in this direction and felt that those were the materials that were the least impactful on the production side, the sourcing side. And if you're going to focus on the recycling of them, not that you're supporting their production or whatever they create in making it, that's a material that's extremely useful and is more benign. It's also something that can be, the FDA is able to say it's able to house food. And I'll just also say this, so there's a lot of chat about styrene. Again, I'm not a scientist, but I know that going into a styrene manufacturing plant is not a good time. And I don't want to spend, my days going into a recycling styrofoam plant or anything that involves styrene. But I've been in plenty of high density polyethylene and polypropylene recycling facilities, and I know how I feel when I walk out of them. I feel fine. So I also would say that there's different levels of toxicity as it relates to when these plastics go into landfills. And again, 5s and 4s rank as the best on that list compared to many of the other plastics. And of course, there's BPA scares, PFAS scares, and what those are doing to your endocrine system, as well as potentially what's happening on the other side as it relates to moving into the second life of the death. Sorry, I'm reading this chat. Polypropylene, sorry, is PP number 5, and high density polyethylene is number 2. Ben, do you have anything to add?
No, from our standpoint as a simple recycler, anything that we're not capturing for recycling, whether it's the LDPE films, whether it's the multi-layered or bunch of plastics all mixed together that's not making it in. I'm like you. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a scientist. I'm just looking at the simple things, the materials that we are currently removing from the recycle stream, putting them back into the marketplace. I think is some type beneficial. What's not getting recycled is the stuff that's still out there that we need to look at and we need to work on.
Carolyn, can I just add on also as it relates to plant-based? I mean, we do believe that we can be in a place with PHA where the high school student doesn't need to ask that question, in the sense that it could be called something else, could be called Plantix, but it can be proven out that toxicity in this plant-based product is like a plant, and that's where we want to go. And I also just want to harken back to Janet's point that they're one of the reasons that we have hope and faith, and one of the changes that we think we need to see is we need to see changes in perception and behavior amongst consumers, preservers, we like to call them. Carolyn, let's go back, not go back to 1948, or sorry if it was Janet or Carolyn, I forget, but we need to look at and say, we shouldn't be requiring of a single use product, something that lasts for hundreds of years. So why does a fork that's used to eat a salad need to last that long? So let's create a fork that lasts for that use if it has to, and have it be as low or reusable, right? So we all carry our silverware around, that's fantastic too. But if it is a single use and on the go, create it from something that is not going to be around forever and is completely benign when you're done with it, and also has a lower greenhouse gas completely in its full life cycle. And that's kind of a key goal. That's a high bar. And I just want to emphasize what I'm getting at is when a consumer uses a plant-based fork, they have to know it's not a styrene fork. It's not a polypropylene fork, and it's going to behave differently. So we really, we want to have faith in preservers, consumers, that they can be at a point where they're like, okay, this isn't behaving like that styrene fork, because it's not going to last for 50 years. It's not going to find its way to the ocean. It's not going to be harmful to animals.
When I testify in these issues, I say, let's make disposable a dirty word.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Janet, you mentioned the production of plastic, and here's a question. What is the status of producer responsibility in reducing plastic waste rather than shifting the burden to the consumer? And maybe more specifically, there was another question, what's the status of the Break Free from Plastic Federal Act?
Yeah, that's going to be fun. That just got filed last year in February, I believe, or late March. And so really, this is our first full session. So the Break Free from Plastic bill was filed in Congress.
Yeah.
And, we're 100% nonpartisan, so I'm not saying this from a partisan standpoint. I'm saying it from a realistic standpoint. Last session, I think it was filed as much to kind of get the message out and set some conversations around these issues. This session, there's going to be actual legislative push for it. So it's brand new. I don't like to predict what happens in any legislative body, but I think there will be a push. Are we, weeks or months away from that bill passing? I would doubt it. But is there going to be a real, legislative campaign for it in Congress? Yes. In Massachusetts, we just filed a state producer responsibility bill. And by the way, I think the best example in our everyday life of producer responsibility is the bottle bill, the deposit law, because producers are responsible as that container's life cycle goes. So even though it doesn't get characterized that way, I think the bottle bill is a producer responsibility bill, but we have a separate producer responsibility bill filed this year, and a lot of support for it already just in the drafting of it. So I'm hoping for the best. I feel like this state legislative session, I feel like there's some new people, there's some new energy, and we're all, I don't want to say getting used to doing this on Zoom, but we're not thrown on our heels like we were in April and May and June last year of like, how do I talk to anybody? So I'm looking forward, and again, please, I'll put my email in the chat or the Q&A, but please feel free to contact me offline to get involved in any of these campaigns.
Great. Okay. So Ben, maybe this one goes your way. Here's this question. What's up with the plastic bag recycling at some grocery stores? Are those actually usefully recycled, or is it more of a public relations effort? It's a big mystery.
Yeah, that, again, I don't do that type of work in my daily job. I do know that there's been a time when it was more of a public relations than it was a recycling thing. Okay, bring your bag back. We'll put them in this big thing and we'll ship them off. In today's environment, I think there's a lot more demand for that type of material I think I just read somewhere that Trex has done a deal with some of the bags that are coming back into the grocery stores that they're trying to use. But again, you end up with multi-material, different types of plastic. They're not all the single-use bags that we get from Market Basket. You go to Target, you might get a different type of plastic in their bag. So if they're all collected, they have to be sorted. And I think that was where the biggest issue was in the past, is separating those materials the same as it is in our operation, separating the different types of plastic and making it work. I'm sure that Janet has a different spin on this, and she's probably more in tune to what's going on than I am on that end of it.
Janet?
Yeah, let's not figure out how to recycle things we shouldn't have in the first place, I guess is the way that I would say it.
Okay, yeah, yes, yeah. It's funny because in Acton, we have banned single-use plastic bags, but I noticed that those plastic, collectors are still filled with bags. Yeah, okay.
Let me just jump. There's one of the things that Janet and I might agree on is that the plastic bags, if they end up in our system, cause a tremendous amount of downtime. They wrap around our screens. We don't want to see them. So from that standpoint, we just as soon not have them around. So we do agree on that to some extent.
Okay, so listen, a real quickie, Ben, any of you, does anyone in Massachusetts keep data about the rates of recycling in individual towns? And if so, how can we get that data?
I believe that's Mass DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, gets all of that. All municipalities are supposed to report into Mass DEP. I know that they have a rating on the different communities and how much they recycle. So I don't know where it is on the website.
Okay.
You could probably contact John Fisher or Brooke Nash or somebody, and they should be able to tell what municipality is the volume or the percentage that they're recycling.
Good.
Your own city or town public works should also, if you just want to know your own city or town, the Public Works Department, I would think, would know that.
Public Works or Board of Health or Health Agent. Yep.
Okay. So a general question, and this is from, I guess, a group of college students, maybe, I don't know. What advice would you, any panelists, offer to student action groups wanting to get their high school or college campuses involved in similar initiatives, especially in the context of COVID, as we have lost a lot of ground on this front?
We have very active, we're not in the high schools, but we have very active college campuses. And so I could connect you with people, and we have like 13 official chapters and then clubs at another dozen or 15 college campuses in Massachusetts around the state. And by the way, they're going great. Students are they figured, of course, no surprise, they figured out how to do everything they wanted to do digitally within about 5 minutes, unlike me, which is like, where's share screen, so anyway.
Yeah, that's great.
Can I make a plug for an organization called PLAN, Post Landfill Action Network? Originated in University of New Hampshire, and they, have evolved to the point. Their claim to fame is realizing that they can be there to receive furniture that kids are throwing away as they exit the system at the end of the school year, hold that furniture in a warehouse and resell it at a lower price to the kids coming in the next year. So that was their claim to fame, but now they're like a full consultancy that helps universities with sustainability initiatives nationwide.
Wow, could you put that on the chat?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Can I just say one thing about plastic bags? I just want to say, like someone said, it's all crap. I don't think it's all crap. I think that, obviously single-use plastic bags should not be used because we should all have reusable bags. Bottom line is everybody doesn't do that, right? Other than, everybody on this call. And plastic bags, the single-use plastic bags use less resources than a paper bag manufacturing process. And the plastic bags that we've tracked through, not each individual bag, but as Ben was saying, it's utilized for a lot of plastic lumber production. And someone could look at that from an environmental standpoint and say, actually, a plastic lumber deck is a hell of a lot more environment friendly than a wood deck that needs to be painted with, paints that need to resist the weather for many, many years. So there's definitely an environmental balance that's looked at when you look at the full life cycle of that.
Okay, well, it is 8:10 and we're going to try to be as faithful to ending it at 8:15. And so we have just enough time for one very quick response from each of you, hopefully to end on a positive note. And that is, what gives you hope at this point around plastic?
I'd be
Okay.
happy to start. What gives me hope around, it gives me hope around a lot of things is a whole other story of just sort of business and sustainability and carbon neutral and coming out of COVID. I do think a lot of businesses and a lot of entities are going to come out stronger. I think we've learned a lot how to sustain and survive. I think, consumption has certainly gone up during COVID, which is a drag as it relates to home consumption. But our impact has gone down as it relates to emissions globally. And I hope that so many cities, countries are able to look around and say, wow, isn't that nice to have a clear sky? Let's figure out how to come out of this crisis stronger. But as it relates to plastic, I would just say, I do have a lot of faith that we're going to evolve in the making of materials that are substitutes for plastics. Let's not call them plastics. I once heard that a candle is plastic. So, plastic has sort of been all this broad term, but I have faith that we're going to develop more and more materials that are benign, that are made from plants, that we're able to construct without inducing harmful chemicals or toxins, and that can be, beneficial to our planet at its end of life.
Okay, thank you. You can be polite or I can call on you. Ben?
Well, I guess from my standpoint, again, very simplistic part of this is that we need outlets for the materials that we collect and that we process. And as we start to see more interest in purchasing recycled plastics and turning them into another product, or even turning them into the same product again and again and again, as we start to get materials approved for food grade or human touching of materials, I look at that as a positive. If we're not going to eradicate all plastics off the face of the earth, they're still going to be made. As a consumer, we look for plastics to bring things home from the store. From my standpoint, I hope that we continue to develop outlets for these materials, different markets for these materials, kind of following up a little bit on what Eric said. That's important to me. And until we get to a point where we're generating a different type of material.
Thank you. And Janet?
Yeah, I think without sounding like a Hallmark card, what gives me hope is young people. I already talked a moment ago about the college students that I work with, but I saw a documentary over the summer about a 5th grade class in Brooklyn. I think it was called Microplastic Madness, if I'm remembering properly. And basically, like, these 5th graders took it upon themselves, to get their burrow. Whether you look at the straws movement, started by young kids. I just have hope that the young people are ready to take it all on. They're doing it, and they're our future. That's my hope.
Yeah. So be it. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Janet, Ben, and Eric. We really appreciate it. Thank you for informing us and inspiring us to possibilities for action and a lot of things to think about. And I also want to thank the audience for being here. And I apologize that we weren't able to get to all your questions. We are going to put on some sources for you that were put on the chat at the beginning. If you want to, we're finished. It's 8:15, But if you want to just stick on for a few minutes and maybe take a screenshot of these resources, feel free to. So again, Janet, Ben, Eric, thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Carolyn.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Thank you so
All right,
much.
everyone.
good evening.